Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to our live stream here on lichess via Twitch. I'm your host for the stream, International Master Ponda. So, we are doing our Wednesday Retro Master Analysis stream. We take a look at famous Masters games from the past. We've got about 2 hours here. Wildcard Wednesday, it says. International Master Sladgy, that's my Twitch handle, analyzes games of the past Masters and their openings. Alright, so I've got the first game in here. McDonald versus the Bourdonnais. This is a Sicilian defense, which is interesting. Le Bourdonnais, de la Bourdonnais, he was actually named Louis Charles Mahe de la Bourdonnais. Interestingly, was born on the island of Reunion. Eventually moved to Paris, became regarded as the strongest chess player in the world in his short chess career. Not that short. But he did die at a very young age, in his mid-40s. Alright, so famous for this matches he played against McDonald, the Irishman, in the early 1800s. But, I mean, if you look at de la Bourdonnais' play, I mean, his play is... it's very modern. It shows true genius, I think. It's remarkable. At that time, not an era where people were, like, really playing in such a hyper-modern sort of way. Asterbay, what's up? So, we get a few players here. We'll start taking a look at some Le Bourdonnais games. I've got the first one in the study. Wild Wednesday Retro Games Analysis. These studies are publicly available that I do on Wednesdays, so everyone's welcome to check it out. Alright. Welcome to the stream, Asterbait. Welcome, everybody. Marty Matsko, Gita B, Poop Minty, Raffle Vantry, and Carbo. So far, just a few viewers. We're getting started. Alright, this is the first game we're going to go over from their match in 1834. This is McDonald with white, Le Bourdonnais with black, e4, c5. Almost everybody in this era played e4, e5. Of course, Le Bourdonnais played e5 as well. Now knight f3. And this is not the McDonald. We'll see the McDonald variation later with f4. He basically invented the Grand Prix attack, what we would call... the Grand Prix attack today is a little more sophisticated, but the concept behind f4, a closed Sicilian with f4, was first played probably by this guy McDonald, George McDonald. So knight f3, modern move. Knight c6, of course, out behind the pawn. I mean, this is the number one most logical follow-up in the Sicilian. And then d4. Again, like the modern move. Open Sicilian, and this game is played in 1834, almost 200 years ago. Wow. C takes d4, knight takes d4, no silly gambits. And now it's interesting. We're playing hypermodern chess here, but it hasn't fully evolved. So black plays, what does black play? e5. This is an important opening. Today, we know that knight b5 is white's best move. Now, a6. The Lowenthal variation, I mean, that's the most interesting continuation for black, like forcing knight d6 check. But for some reason, McDonald doesn't know that knight b5 is white's best move. Coming into this weak square on d6 is the threat. Modern chess is moved toward this Kalashnikov variation with d6, and this wasn't really played until the end of the 80s, early 90s, I guess early 90s, maybe circa 1990, 1991. We first started to see the Kalashnikov variation. Prior to that, the normal move here was a6, going into the Lowenthal. Knight d6 check, bishop d6, queen d6, and now Lowenthal's original idea of queen f6, queen c7 is critical, or there's the Ulf Anderson queen e7 variation. Now I've suddenly got very bad ping. Hopefully that's not going to stay with us for long. Let's check the stream. Guys, please support the stream and donate if you can. No donations, no gift subs, no bit donations this week. It's been a really depressing and slow end to the month here. Alright, please support the stream if you can. Subscribe. Don't forget to donate so we can continue to do this. Sad will be the day when I have to stop streaming. Alright, knight d6 check. Not happening in this game. Instead, McDonald plays knight takes knight. It's a terrible move. I mean, I can't even begin to explain how bad this is. So now black could play d takes c and have an equal game. Ironically, you see a couple of games where black actually did this and won. I mean, winning is not that easy here, but a draw should be fairly easy to achieve with symmetrical structure. After queen takes d8 check. Astrobate, are you with us? Is anybody out there? Anyone at all? Can you hear me? Welcome to the stream. Turkey Farm is here. Wow. So, I mean, this is unambitious for black, of course, taking with the d pawn. B takes c. It's terrible. I mean, we've lost control of d5. What's the most important square in the Sicilian? d5. Answering my own questions. I can't believe that someone played this with white against Magnus Carlsen. You should be kicked out of chess for the rest of your life for playing this opening with white. Let alone against Magnus Carlsen. Holmov played knight takes c6. That is ridiculous. It's a terrible move by white. Alright, knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop c4, attacking f7. White is like pretending that it's an e4, e5 opening, basically. Yes, rhetorical questions are useful. I mean, this is what we see. We're pretending it's the e4, e5. Pretending that it's the bishop's opening or something. But there's no control of d5. Without control of d5, what are you going to do? You're going to threaten mate on f7? Are you going to get a knight to d5? Are you going to get a double attack against the rook on a8 and the bishop and the queen on f7? No, there's nothing. Knight f6, best move. And now already a bad move. Another bad move by white. Rhetorical questions are welcome. There's a game here. These Malaysian guys, that's a famous situation where they were cheating. And if you look in the opening explorer, Tin Hutun Zaw versus Moon Lat, 2500s. They're not even real masters. There was a lot of fake stuff going on there in Malaysia in '99. But they organized all these tournaments to give people ratings that were like fake players or just overinflated their ratings. Anyway, just an offbeat thing that happened like 20 years ago. I remember. Those are not real 2500s. But Bozidar Ivanovic, I mean, nobody good is going to play this with white. Seriously. McDonald can be forgiven because it's like 1834. But for a modern player to play this, it's either a made-up game with fake 2500s or some guy who's like having a bad day and just, doesn't feel like playing chess or something. White loses control of d5, but now bishop g5. Even the made-up chess players didn't play that. Anonymous Gifter gave Deep Star 6 a tier 1 sub. Our first gift sub, although it won't be counted as in the contest for top gifters for the week because it's anonymous, but thank you anyway. Very generous. Bishop g5. Why is this a bad move? It's important. I'm seeing people do this all the time. This pin is easily broken by bishop e7. It's not as bad as this. Like, I see a lot of people doing like castles, bishop e7, and then bishop g5. That's even worse. That's like you have no pin. You're setting yourself up for like a counter threat of some kind. But don't play bishop g5 when there's no pin, or don't play bishop g5 when the pin can be easily broken. This is a very bad move by white. And honestly, like, you don't even have to respond to this pin. I mean, black could play many different moves, but the Bourdonnais played very compact here with bishop e7. Curious if that's the best move. Let's see what the Oracle says. Yeah, the Oracle actually wants to be, I call Stockfish the Oracle. It actually wants to be more ambitious. So, Deep Star 6, welcome to the stream. I don't know, bishop e7 is not a bad move. It's a safe move. But yeah, I mean, it's possible I could ask for more, like rook b8, something more ambitious. Even bishop c5, because this pin is so useless and non-threatening that black can just ignore it. This is obviously a better diagonal for the bishop. Totally ineffective pin by McDonald here. But black responds kind of passive. h6 with the idea of knight takes e4. Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything. If this, though, g5, bishop g3, knight takes e4, you can't take on e5 because of queen a5 check. You could, though. You have this move to save you at the end, don't you? Even here, black's fine. It would be a nice bishop if it gets to this diagonal, but black has some weaknesses. Yeah. Alright, so bishop e7, queen e2. And now, the problem is with black's position, if you don't do anything, eventually you're going to be backward on this file here. So if black were to play too passively, he could drift into a slightly worse position, theoretically. Even that's probably not that bad, because the bishop on g5 doesn't really contribute that much here. But this was a great move, I thought. The problem is this e5 pawn, though. Are we going to be able to keep it protected? d5, I mean, I don't know. White played really badly in this entire game, and many games. He was definitely outclassed by Le Bourdonnais, though he did win some games. Bishop takes f6, like giving up the dark square bishop. Now white's only hope is a white square, completely white square threats, because black has dark square bishop, only one minor piece that can attack the white squares. White has two minor pieces that can attack the white squares. So if black isn't careful, white can get a kind of white square bind, or like a defensive blockade on the white squares. Bishop b3, this is at least a good move. Castle, castle, and now black played a5 with the cheapo bishop a6. Actually double cheapo, because you're threatening a4. So we got a problem. Maybe it's not even a cheapo at that point, when you have a double threat of that magnitude. But So you can't defend against both, except for this move, which is disaster. You got to give up your center to avoid the double threat of a4 and bishop a6. I guess theoretically bishop a6 doesn't win, right? Because white can play c4. So if white can prevent a4, he can meet bishop a6 with c4. How to prevent a4? I mean, theoretically you could play a3 and meet bishop a6 with c4. I've got really big lag. Rook b8, and then something like knight to d2. Can I play knight d2? Wow, my internet is like crashed or something. Weird. Not a good day so far. a5, e takes d5, c takes d5. No, I want to look at this variation with c4. Oh, I'm trying to make two moves in a row? No, I said rook b8. I was trying to analyze rook b8, right? Black is better, but not winning yet. I was trying to get to this position, for example. This wouldn't work, right? Rook takes, knight takes, bishop takes. We win back our material. Black is better. Can white make a move, though? Something like this. I mean, like, for example, you could reach some kind of position where maybe it's not that bad. Like here, where black's pawns are all destroyed. It's not so simple. So a5, e takes d5, giving up the center, c takes d5, and now rook d1. Black to play now, he's facing bishop takes d5. Probably the threat of bishop takes d5, and then knight c3. For example, bishop here, bishop takes, knight c3. So de la Bourdonnais had no choice but to play d4. And the problem is the white squares are a little bit weak. We have to be careful. Now white, I guess, made a very bad mistake. I don't know what white should play instead of taking on d5. I don't know. Like I'm saying, he could have tried. He could have tried. I don't want to give up my strong pawn on e4. Yeah, the engine says rook d1 right away. Another point is that, of course, I guess a4 is not really a threat because of bishop c4. He's not lost necessarily. So I'm just trying to say this is a further like worsening of white's position. You don't want to give up your pawn on e4 when you're white in the Sicilian. Masturbate, what are you talking about? It's McDonald versus Le Bourdonnais. (1834). So white should not give up the center unless necessary. E takes d5, c takes d5, rook d1, d4, c4. I don't like this move at all. But he's afraid that his bishop's getting trapped. I don't know. You know, why does white have to play c4 here? You give black a passed pawn. So then clearly that makes his position even worse. Queen b6, bishop c2. This was his idea, to transfer to this diagonal. But honestly, black now has a protected pass pawn on d4. Really good position for black. Honeyshberger, what are you talking about? It's not too connected. This is just one passed pawn on d4. In order for black to have two connected passed pawns, he has to make white's f2 pawn magically disappear. Don't get too excited. They're nice pawns, but they're not two connected pawns. They're just strong, central pawns. Bishop e7. Now the problem is we don't want to trade our white square bishop off, but white can't play this without dropping b2. So he plays knight d2, and queen here, I don't know. Bishop h7 check, probably. Queen b2, bishop h7 check, king h7, rook b1, grab the bishop down here. I would imagine that maybe black could play this, but it looks like he loses control of the position. So there's no reason to go crazy. He just plays this, rook a e8, knight e4. Now, what I liked about black's play in this game is this part. Bishop e7 might be a good move. I'm not quite sure if there's a problem with that. It looks most logical. If I were white, I don't know, I would seriously consider something like g4 to try to stop this, the pawn majority, from just getting out of control with f5. But what was kind of cool was the fact that de la Bourdonnais in 1834, I thought he played in a very modern fashion. With the two bishops, he plays bishop d8, keeping this rook open and the ability of the bishop to maneuver to c7. So both bishops attacked along diagonals. Truthfully, white played badly in this game. c5, queen c6, obviously powerful threats, and now f3, stopping it, of course. Bishop e7. Now he goes back because of the threat of knight d6. Rook a c1, f5, queen c4 check, king h8, bishop a4. So black has to see this. Black has to see this. Queen c4 check. Novira Carlson, I've been streaming at the same time for like 5 years now. Just 5 years or so. King h8, bishop a4, queen h6, bishop takes e8. He sees this whole thing, or he just got lucky? He must have calculated it all. Queen c4 check, king h8, bishop a4, dropping the exchange ostensibly, and then queen h6. And it's no problem. Look, take. And now the bishop's hanging. Black has incredible threats for the exchange. Vera Carlson, the problem is, dude, that I guess you don't have daylight savings time, but the rest of the world does. I don't know why you guys are saying this stuff. You don't understand how daylight savings time works. I live in Eastern Europe, and daylight savings time changes here. It's not that I started early, okay? Your time relative to Eastern Central European time is different. The rest of the world has daylight savings time. North America, Europe. But you got to understand, it's not that I'm changing my schedule. It's that your time zone is different relative to my time zone now. My schedule hasn't changed. You guys need to study up a little bit on time zones and daylight savings time. Anyway. Alright, dude, you're being really annoying now. So please stop that. You're distracting from my whole class by asking these crazy questions about whether I started early or not. It's totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter, and it's distracting from what I'm trying to do. Please stop interrupting while I'm doing this. The schedule is very clear. So I don't know that he just blundered it, or it's not clear. But I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure he can calculate it, but did he calculate it, or was it like intuitive? By the way, there was no time control for these games. So in some cases they thought for hours. They thought for hours on one move. Not always, but sometimes. There literally was no time control. That's a lot of time to calculate. Probably a 2-hour move or something. Black took his time here. Yeah, and that's the thing that's annoying about it, Asterbate. The time changes were always well documented. Yeah, some countries don't have daylight savings time. Majority of them do. King h8, bishop a4, queen h6, bishop e8, f takes e4. He sacks the exchange, now c6, and this is nice. This is the pretty move, because after pawn takes, you've got the rook active here. Yeah, about the rooks. Yeah, I mean, I feel like rook a e8. This is the idea. See, he wants to. I think it's already about clearance for this bishop d8, not to get in the way of bishop e7. And someone mentioned rook e6. Maybe GM Tranquilizer. I don't know. It's a possibility. No, you don't want the f rook. I mean, this was always... It was always intended to play f5. So what happened in the game was like all the pawns get unleashed. Black needs to play f5 to get control of the e4 square. All the time, the whole thing is about this... The pawn majority, you know, getting the whole pawn majority moving. I mean, that's the point. The f rook will be developed from its original square. A rook coming over here. Yeah, this is classic. It's just like when you're white in a queen pawn game and your rook, you're pushing f4. You're developing your rook from its original square. This would be a mechanical sort of like, you know, ordinary move. It's just too mechanical, robotic to play like rook f e8. Plus, white doesn't have like a dark square bishop. You're not going to lose an exchange to something like bishop a3 where your rook f8 gets trapped. All the time it's intending to come in. But I like this position. f5, queen c4 check. I don't know if that's a good move, but he wins the exchange for a time. Queen h6, and then I think this is sound. Bishop e8 takes. I didn't look with the engine, but I'm not surprised. Yeah, it's plus 1.7 for black. Plus 1.7. as I said, this is the key, this rook getting in. So after c6, he can play this exclamation point move. I mean, this is the entire point behind the exchange sacrifice. You can't take on b7 because of check, and you get mated. I think this is the single most important tactic in the game. If king f1, obviously, takes, king takes, rook check, and it's mate shortly. If king h1, and this is the most important line, right? Like takes, check, same mate, king h1, queen f3. Maybe that's what McDonald missed. The point is, after c6, black can just ignore the threat, and so he takes here, and now white's kingside is destroyed. He plays rook c2, queen e3 check. Presumably rook f2 is like pawn takes g2, so king h1. At least he's guarding g2. Bishop c8, which looks good for white. The problem is you can't take here because of queen f3 check and grab the rook. So now white plays bishop d7, ostensibly up the exchange for white, but the pawns are too strong. And this is a famous game because, honestly, it's famous for a sort of stupid reason, I think. Like, McDonald gets these pawns down in his face, black gets these pawns down, but actually it was just a really good modern Sicilian by black. I thought, beyond this pretty pawn thing. f2, rook f1, d3, rook c3, and now bishop takes d7. Because if you try to take here, black has queen e2, which is a problem. There's no in-between move. You have to take, and now e4 with these three pawns. This is in a lot of books, this game. Maybe the most famous game by the Bourdonnais, because the three pawns that come down. The pawn farm. Exactly. McDonald pawn farm. Queen here, bishop d8 with the blockade. And the three pawns are too strong. Queen c4, queen e1. I mean, it's possible to miss that move, and then the devastation is this. d2. It's a good illustration of how strong, how strong passed pawns are. I mean, you can't do anything. Acerbate needs to understand. This is a good game for you, Acerbate. You need to understand how important promoting pawns is. Promoting pawns is just as important as playing for mate in terms of winning games. The Bourdonnais understood how important passed pawns are. Acerbate needs to add that element to his game. e3. Yeah, Donger's exactly. The pawn on the 7th is worth a rook. Ideas like that. How much is a pawn on the 7th worth? A lot of people just play for mate with the pieces and they don't understand that pawns are just as important. So this is funny. Like queen c3, queen takes, rook takes. He couldn't resist getting the three pawns on the 7th. It's it's elegant. And obviously there's nothing that white can do. It's not every day you see three pawns on the 7th. So that's worth 15 points of material by Donger's system. But from my perspective, the pawn stuff at the end was like the dessert. I mean, the real heart of this game was kind of like the modern Sicilian style of play for black, and his use of the two bishops and the central pawn majority that made this possible. The elegant ending to the game for me wasn't the most important part. It's cute, it's remembered by everybody, but earlier stage shows a lot of understanding by de la Bourdonnais. And so White resign. All right, now there's another one. This I'm going to add move by move. Game 2. We've got massive lag here. It doesn't make sense. I mean, there shouldn't be a lot of people on my internet. I mean, like, traffic shouldn't be that high. Agnes Karadewski subscribed with Twitch Prime. Subscribed for 17 months. Thank you. Agnes Karadewski for being a supporter of the stream. Having a bad day today. I couldn't sleep last night for some unknown reason. So if I'm a little grumpy, don't hold it against me. I can barely get out of bed. But we're going to do our best here. I would never miss a stream unless I was deathly ill. So this is a game E4 notes by Morphy. Morphy came along after this. You know, you got to understand. Basically, how did Morphy learn chess? I mean, he came along after this and knew these games. Paris with a C says, I don't play, but I'm watching on and off from 2017. But you've never seen a specific game. Super interesting. Paris with a C. Yeah, that's that game. Okay, I probably know it from 500 Master Games of Chess. Now that I think about it, Tartakover's got this Bible-sized book called 500 Games of Chess, and I know the game from there. You know, that's probably toward the back of the book. He organized the book by openings, and he does all the classical openings in the front. That's a Sicilian, so it's toward the end of the book. I analyzed pretty much all the games for 500 Games of Chess, so I recognize that one. But yeah, super famous game because of the 3 pawns on the 7th. But very bad play by McDonald. I mean, McDonald's play in that game, Black played like a modern international master, let's say, plus maybe GM, like a modern grandmaster, but White's play in that game was like a club level player, not a high level of play. This is another game, E4, C5, F4, and this is McDonald's system. So, were you reading about this, Acerbate, in the Treasury of Chess Lore? Or just about this match? So F4, E6. I mean, this might be Black's best move. The modern gambit is more aggressive. Yeah, the F4 is played all the time. This gambit was not, as far as I know, it wasn't played back then. You know, it is a kind of romantic idea, though. I mean, if you think about openings like this were played, if you think about the fact that the Falkbeer counter gambit was played at this time in the early 1800s, probably, you know, wouldn't it be beyond de la Bourdonnais or someone to figure out that D5 is a good move against the McDonald attack? But the idea is that you take, not with the queen, but play knight f6 and develop quickly. In the 80s, like, people played queen takes d5, but White was still able to get a decent game with his tempo, knight c3. It wasn't until this was really invented that Black was able to completely equalize, I think. White can probably barely maintain equality with, like, bishop e5 check in this variation. Short Kasparov, 1990. I think it's true that White can probably maintain an equal game if he plays perfectly. He doesn't have to be worse. But that's the maximum. D5 is a good move. E6 is also a good move. Now knight F3. And black plays D5. Yeah, E6 is good. E6 is good, particularly against F4. So now it's a good, it's called McDonald attack. It's a good French, basically. E5. Knight C6. C3. I call this the taxi driver variation. Do see it. Maybe it's popular because people study these really old games. I mean, I do see this type of stuff for White. Why is it good French? Well, I mean, White's overextended, I think, with the F4. Probably. And he still hasn't even supported his center with D4. I mean, we don't have to call it a French, actually. It's more like a French-Sicilian hybrid than a French, technically. It's by definition, it may be actually like a closed Sicilian, literally, rather than a French, technically. I don't know what he did. There weren't a lot of strong players in this time. You have to understand. I mean, this is before Morphy. But I guess if you gave the guy a direct attack, McDonald was very strong. Now he played, check this out, Knight H6 is known. That's like the modern move, probably, for this position. But he played F6. Now, I'm wondering about this move. Is F6 good? It seems like a very modern style move. Exceptional, attacking the head of the pawn chain there, which Nimzovich would be like skeptical about. But it's also, I would argue, like Black's most aggressive move. Should White think about taking on F6? If you take on F6, Black plays Knight F6 and develops quickly. But I mean, White could play D4. Stopping E5 for good. No, I don't think it's that simple. I mean, probably White is okay here. Wow, computer thinks that White is clearly worse. I really didn't think it was that bad. Why is it so bad for White? Honestly, I really didn't think it would be that bad. I thought it would be just a tiny bit worse for White. So I thought this was a very modern take. Like, look how many games have been played here, and only a few people played F6. But I don't think it's a bad move. I'm kind of neutral on F6. But Ben Feingold would freak out, right? What does De La Bourdonnais know? But I like it because it's directing play against the strong center. I mean, D4 looks like a normal move. Here's a modern game from 2014. I mean, Knight H6 is more of a blockading strategy, but not as directly aggressive. I think you got to have a lot of experience to understand when to play F6 in the French. Knight A3. This shows a modern style of play too. Putting the knights on the side of the board was basically condemned by classical players. Any sort of knight to the side maneuver like this, I feel, is very modern. Knight 8, A3, Knight H6. You know, it's hard to believe they were playing like this in 1834. Not too many people in 1834 were exercising maneuvers like modern advanced French. Knight C2, Queen B6, and now D4. So there's a game, man. I mean, Kolmyakov, who's like a Russian grandmaster, against Yagupov. Here's a game from freaking 1834, and you've got two Russian grandmasters playing this position in 2000. That's amazing to me, you know? It's amazing to me that in 1834, they basically played on a level with modern grandmasters. Not a common position, but still, it's logical play by both sides. Bishop D7. And now Morphy criticized the next move. Here's another master game. Bishop D3, which looks logical. Bishop D3 or Bishop E2. Bishop D3 plays against Knight F5. It's a better square for the bishop, but you have less coverage of D4. This was a mistake, according to Morphy. And I think the argument, and Morphy's, of course, specialty was development. We need to get the pieces developed. Knight E3 is moving the same piece again. He's trying to stop Knight F5, though. It's not without logic. Yeah, that's funny, Edward Elric. Over the past year, De La Bourdonnais has had the most page views in the English Wikipedia edition. Asri, what are you talking about? Most page views of what? Alright. C takes D4. C takes D4. Bishop B4 check now. Before we say, like, wait, it's crazy. I mean, you gotta realize that check, knight takes D4 wins a pawn. There is no queen A4 check in this type of position. So, I mean, this is what Morphy was skeptical of, king F2. To be honest, I mean, some of you may know this variation, but subsequently would be discovered a line in the Tarash after like knight F6, E5, knight FD7, F4, C5, C3, knight C6, knight DF3, queen B6, for example, like A3. Let's not say A3, but which variation? There's one variation, I guess H4, CD4, CD4, check, king F2. Again, it's not the same position, but I don't know how do we, you know, is it possible that McDonnell was the predecessor for this modern variation where white plays like king F2, king G3 in this very sharp line of the Tarash? You could say, oh, Morphy can say, well, you know, it's crazy, you never let your king go to F2. But I think the guy deserves credit because his whole concept isn't that ridiculous. Let's go back to the game, though. King F2. I've had games with players here on the stream, Mule Skinner, in that variation, and it's always a sack on your pawn chain for black that busts white's line. The rook opening up on the F file. That's exactly what happens here. So check out black, how modern his play is. Castles, king G3. So before we condemn white for being a maniac and playing, like Magnus Carlsen, um, there there seems to be real basis for this idea of playing King G3 and trying to get it back, or maybe just leave it on G3. But it's not completely safe. F takes E5, F takes E5, and now exchange sacrifices with rook takes F3 are a thing in this variation, but it wouldn't be enough, right? And we could like sack the exchange for one pawn, maybe. Black would have chances, but we're not really sure if that's enough. So watch this. Bishop E8. F takes E5. Bishop E8. This guy is a genius. He's like a positional genius. The whole idea of playing such a modern way with like knight H6 and bishop E8. This is totally perfect. Perfect play that you could make an episode of Ancient Aliens and claim that De La Bourdonnais was abducted by aliens and had like access to the knowledge of the universe or something. I mean, nobody was playing chess like this in the 1800s, pre-1850. It's a shame that he never got to play Morphy, because that could have been interesting. If he had lived a normal lifespan, probably he didn't really die in 1840 or whatever. They said he died at like 43, but he was probably like taken back by the aliens to the home planet. I mean, seriously, bishop E8. Okay, you don't have any other squares for the bishop, obviously. It's not just bishop E8, it's the whole scheme of development was like freaking perfect for black. Knight H6, F6, bishop E8, it's all extremely modern positional play. King H3 now, bishop H5. Botvinnik couldn't have played this game better. You know what I mean? A player from 100 and 100 plus years later could not have played this part of the stage of the game better. I know they had a lot of time, though. Like I said, there was no time control. Now white plays G4. He just got ripped apart. Overextended. White's just textbook overextended. Yeah, I don't think white has a good move, honestly. He's losing the center. He's losing D4. And I doubt like A3 helps. I mean, you just take and go back. Or maybe just go back directly. I think white's just lost, Dongers. What do you think? It's like all moves are bad. He's overextended, and I just don't think a modern grandmaster could have played any better than black did in this game. Again, you say, well, white was weak. Well, that's what all the Morphy's detractors say too. Like, all of his opponents were weak. But what can you do? I mean, black played, perfectly. Bishop G6, Bishop G2, and now black again has to do an exchange sack to win the pawn. So he just plays Bishop E4. Perfect, logical, strategic play. Does there exist any chance here? Maybe like Knight G5 or something? Yeah, wow, I'm good. Knight G5 was the best chance. It was the only chance, it looks like. So Morphy said, the game is capitally played from first to last by Le Bourdonnais, but very indifferently by his antagonist. I agree completely. Basically, black played a perfect game, and white played badly. But still, it's such a modern style of play. It would have been nice to see Le Bourdonnais live long enough to have played Morphy. He certainly would have put up some resistance. Yeah, bishop h5, g4, it's provoking white to further overextend himself. Exactly. Now d4 is falling. So this would have been the only try, hitting e6. So what happens here? Bishop takes g2 check. I mean, I guess, honestly, knight takes with the idea that you could pin. I mean, this was my idea. We could possibly create some complication with the pin. Bishop c5, the old b4 style thing. There might have been some chances to stir up trouble. Wow. Apparently that's not good enough. Knight f3. bc5. Oh my god. There's a mate here. The computer's just going off. Queen b4. Mate detector. Asterbay would have had a field day. Nothing would have saved white. So bishop takes g2 check. That's just analysis. Instead, he didn't play knight g5. He just played terrible move, saving the pawn for the moment, just further weakening his position. This is like what an average player would do. Average player who's like 1800. g5, knight f5, total overextension. Knight f5, rook f5. Black was very patient. I couldn't play any better, you know. It's just this pawn. It's all about that pawn. The white king being open is like a side effect. It's almost like secondary. He's just winning the d4 pawn from move like 3. He's been putting pressure on that pawn. I mean, from the early stages, Black's whole game is based on controlling d4. Maybe white shouldn't play d4. Like, look at this here, Magnus Carlsen Grishuk. If you don't play d4, you can't have a weak pawn on d4. What about we don't play d4? Magnus did play d4. What about this? Komliakov, Komliakov, Komliakov. Apparently this is a favorite of his. But I think there's something to be said for that. Like, also, I mean, the possibility of playing d3, like a clamp type of formation, is probably not that bad for white. But once you play d4, the pawn will always be a target. So this is the game. Rook takes f5, bishop e3, trying to cling to the pawn. And black just simply take, and then finally, what is this? Move 20? Move 20, black has a winning tactic now. I mean, Botvinnik could not have played better, right? Knight takes e5. If you showed me this game and said, hey, this was like Mr. X versus Botvinnik, Simul Moscow, 1938, I would completely believe you, you know? I mean, how can you tell the difference between De La Bourdonnais and Botvinnik? The guy played perfect positional game, then executes a tactic, winning the pawn here. His CPL must be very low. Bishop g4, knight g4, queen g4, rook a f8, perfect efficiency, rook a g1. It's like surgical play by black. Rook a g1 defending against rook f3. Now bishop d6, threatening rook f3. Bishop c1, boys and girls. That's a good sign. Defending the b2 pawn. Hello, rook. Now he can tell his grandchildren that he lost because he was playing rook odds. Rook f3 check. And if king g2, rook f2 check. So he has to play king h4. And then he wins the queen. Basically a perfect game by black. CPL for black must be under 15. What's the center pawn loss in this game? Black didn't make any mistakes. It was like perfect play. Alright, let's create another chapter. I want to go over a game where Bourdonnais was white. Setting up the pieces for the next game. Here's an interesting game, which also illustrates how modern and creative De La Bourdonnais was. Where he's white. This is game 37. Welcome everyone to the stream. We're going over games from 1834. Warnaki. Alright. This is De La Bourdonnais with white. D4. Mostly like most players of that era, he played E4. But I think, you know, for a guy born in 1795, D4 is not bad in 1834. So D4, D5, C4. He knew the London system sucks. I mean, what can you say about this? Nothing but good things about this De La Bourdonnais guy. He understood in 1834 already that the London system sucks and that C4 is white's best move. The Queen's Gambit is the best move. And the guy he just played D4 for fun, you know. It's unreal, right? He's like a part-time D4 player, just for kicks and giggles, and he already knows the London system sucks. It wasn't invented probably to the later stages. No, I mean I'm sure that people played. I bet we can find games with Bishop F4, but it's a logical developing move. But still. They did stuff like, I mean, for example, Warnaki, I think there were a lot of games in this era with stuff like Knight C3, Knight C6, Bishop F4, Bishop F5. You would see like symmetrical Borisov with stuff like that, you know, and this is very typical opening for the 1800s. But I mean, this is totally modern. I'm trying to say how modern this guy was what makes him special. But check this out now. C4, D takes C4. McDonald plays the Queen's Gambit accepted. And I honestly, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you got a gunslinger type of E4 here with white. But my favorite move, E3, I just yesterday played a game with this. The Godiva variation we reach by transposition. Um, now black plays the sharpest move, e5. Now we transpose to an exchange French, which was a very popular opening in the 1800s. Bishop takes d4, e takes d4, e takes d4. I think this is like... By the way, this I should clarify is game 37, but it's the Bourdonnais. I do have this study for everyone. If you want to, it's public study if you want to clone it or join it. It's De La Bourdonnais with white versus McDonald. But this is interesting because he didn't play that many games with d4. So let's check it out. E takes d4, e takes d4, knight f6. Yesterday, Oms played a setup with an early knight c6 against me, which is more rare. Sorry, I got bad lag. But playable. Different move order. You just detest every queen g8 position. I like open games. You got spooked against a 2350 USCF guy and played e3 when I normally played e4. You got destroyed in 19 moves. No one has ever played e4. Queen's Gambit accepted against him. He plays the Queen's Gambit accepted. Yeah, he's obviously not playing strong enough players. Right, I mean, amateurs are very concerned about losing a pawn. If he's not like playing Korchnoi or something, or really well-prepared players. Dude, like, when you're starting out, you're terrified you're gonna like lose a pawn. How do I get my pawn back? If the 2350 guy faces an average opposition level of like 1900 or 2000, all of his opponents are like, oh man, I gotta get my pawn back. This requires a lot of theoretical preparation, by the way. I might play e4 in blitz, but white has to be really well prepared there. Whereas e3 you can kind of play on your instincts. It's sharper to play e4. Alright. So anyway, I'm just throwing knight c6 out there. Knight f6 is the game. Knight c3. And now black played passively. But it seems to be the main move, even in the opening explorer here. Bishop e7. It's definitely possible to play bishop b4. What's up with bishop f7? Check. Doesn't work because of knight d5. Queen b3. Queen b3, knight d5. That's a weird line. It's queen e7 check, defending both. Okay. This has actually been played, but queen b3 is weird. So bishop e4 is interesting. McDonald just played bishop e7. We have a normal position. You were looking Topalov Anand. Yeah, I mean, Topalov is the kind of guy who would play e4 against the Queen's Gambit accepted. But you gotta really know your shit there. Sorry about the camera. We've got a God moment. Hold on a second. All kinds of bad luck today. I stepped on a fork and my camera is... Alright, be careful where you put your plate so you don't step on it later. Lens flare, yeah. Anyway, alright, this standard game. Knight f3, castle. Dude, h3. This guy is like a genius, you know? He plays the most incisive move for white, probably in this position. h3, prophylactic chess preventing bishop g4. If you castle, you allow black to maybe trade off pieces. This actually looks like it has a good score, though. Oh, white has a really good score here. This type variation, I had almost the same exact game against Ahms yesterday. Dude, this is my game with Ahms from yesterday. That's messed up. Exact position. And Ahms blundered with the dubious move knight c2 here. So how weird is it that this game from 1834 could have transposed to my game from our Ponda Rapid tournament yesterday? That's pretty crazy, man. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy was underrated. But it's sadly he didn't have any competition. My exact game with Ahms, after knight d4, queen b7, knight c2, and white had an advantage. Rook d1, queen b8, rook b8, and I played bishop c1, exclamation novelty. Later I would go on to like try to drop a piece and almost lose the game before I won, but I played this game yesterday. One of my only good games from our... I played half a good game against Ahms in our tournament yesterday, and white has a clear advantage. There was another game where white played bishop f4 here. That's for plebes. Bishop c1, undeveloping your bishop to guard the b2 pawn is real chess. But anyway, that's me. Instead, De La Bourdonnais played h3. I was going to play it on the next move, but Ahms didn't give me... Or how was it? No, that's right. This happened. Castle. h3. Yeah, knight on bd7. Castle. No. This is actual game. Knight b6. Bishop e3. c6. Oh, something's wrong with my move order. Black didn't castle. He actually played... No, black did castle. White didn't castle. Black played castles, h3, knight on bd7. He didn't play castles. He played bishop e3. Alright, maybe this is the first mistake that we've seen from... in 3 games from De La Bourdonnais. I don't like bishop e3 here. It's not necessary. On the other hand, yeah, that's Azerbaijan. On the other hand, you understand his dilemma because white doesn't have a good square for that bishop. But you'll see what happens later in the game. It's interesting. The problem is that white should just castle. Castle, knight b6, bishop e3, c6, rook e1. You don't have a square for your bishop. g5 sucks. Bishop f4 is just floating in space. And the other 2 squares aren't great either. This is more or less like a standard IQP position. Right. Yeah, you should just castle and await developments. For some reason, he decided to play... So he wasn't an alien, actually. He decided to play an inaccurate move here. Bishop e3. No, sorry, wrong position. Why is that in there? I'm getting lost in my own analysis here. c6. Nope. So instead of castles, bishop e3. Knight b6, bishop e3, c6, castles. So basically, I'm lagging again. I mean, De La Bourdonnais was playing like Joseph Pinter in 1834. Yoji. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'll make this the main line. Thank you for the suggestion. But this is premature to develop the bishop to e3. Acerbate. So we've got knight fd5 now. The other guys, Ole Jacobsen and the Finnish FM, Maki, played knight on bd5. Jakobsen, who I played years ago, he's a senior. Knight bd5 or knight fd5. bd5 seems more natural. He's predicting the real estate bubble. Dude, I hope that the housing market goes down. I wouldn't mind if it crashed. In the United States only. Let's pray for a US housing market crash. Not in Europe, not in Hungary, but in the United States. Nothing personal if you have a lot of investment. I would like to see US real estate prices go down. I do think it's a bubble in Canada and the US, but I'm not a licensed investment expert. Knight fd5. Not understanding exactly why is it better to put the f knight on d5, and why do we have to put a knight on d5 at all? Well, for one thing, I guess you could play bishop f5. But it's like a Petrov. There's always this annoying move, knight h4. I mean, we could play like knight h4, queen f3, and gun for knight f5. Yeah, maybe black has plans to dark square bishop f6 or something. I don't really like it, though. Maybe he just wants to put his bishop on e6, but that's independent of... Or maybe it's not independent of that. Maybe the plan is like this, and he wants to play bishop e6. But worried about knight g5? Maybe he wants to stop knight g5 from happening in some positions. Many elderly house owners have gone to market. Well, unfortunately, Acerbate, many of them have gone far beyond the market. They are now with De La Bourdonnais. Assuming he's not been abducted by aliens. For real. Knight on bd5 or knight fd5. Knight fd5. Alright. Not my favorite move, but the next move is really weird too by white. But it's hard to justify bishop e3. See, this is the problem. What do you play now? This looks like one of my blitz games with Morales. Our VIP, Antonio. We've had some games in this type of position. Also, Mule Skinner. I mean, if you played bishop d2 here, I wouldn't think badly of you. Sometimes you just have to like admit you made a mistake. It takes a big man to admit they made a mistake, right? I mean, one of the things that white has is the e-file, and we can't use that with the bishop on e3. But he tries to compromise here. This is interesting, but for me, I'm not sure. Another square is like here, possibly, stopping bishop f5, but you've got to watch out for knight b4 then. And a3 looks too slow and weakening of the pawn structure. Ah, bishop c2, yes. You know, again, there is the possibility of knight b4. So you could even go out on a limb and say like rook c1, if you really want to. That's probably Acerbate's move. But I think bishop e3 screwed white up. It's not clear how to proceed from here. I mean, knight e5 is also a move. Maybe knight e5. Maybe knight e5 with the idea of queen f3. I mean, obviously black could play f6, but this double-edged decision to do that, for sure. So he plays here, queen e2. I don't think this is a bad move necessarily. I mean, obviously you've got to watch the e-file, though. If black plays rook e8, your queen is going to be answering questions at some point. FBI questioning. B-Jock, you sent me a game. Okay. Guys, tomorrow we're going to host the analysis stream for Thursday. So you can send in, subscribers can send games. Everyone can send games, but only subscribers get them analyzed. So subscribe to the stream, guys. Please support the stream. No donations. We had a guest gift sub, though. We're learning something here today. Not a lot of viewers. Retro chess masters are not popular. But I don't freaking care. Whatever. You know, I'm gonna analyze serious stuff. I don't do puzzles, and I don't play bullet chess. I want to actually learn something. Most people don't care about learning, you know. They're just in it for entertainment. But this is an interesting position. Rook e8 against the queen on e2. Instead, black plays... Guess what he played. No cheating, by the way. Now we understand the problem. It's not popular, but it's educational. The problem and why he played this crazy knight, f d5. It probably was better to play the other knight. Even so, I don't mind knight n f d5, but after queen e2 you have to find a good move. Rook e8, bishop f6. The engine says it's equal. Check it out. a5, bishop e6, and I thought he was stopping knight g5 here. The only problem with rook e8 is that sometimes your f7 becomes sensitive at a later date. Wernaki's favorite move, a5. Subscriber stream tomorrow, guys. Blitz on Friday. Let's get a bit donation before the end of the week, hopefully. Someone can send us some charity. Appreciate it, guys. Subscribe and subscribe your friends and grandchildren and all your relatives. You don't believe what he played here. I mean, it's terrible for black. a5 would be like a godsend. a5 is not a bad move. That's developing your rook. You know, this is a justified move. He played this. Yeah. I mean, okay, it's not completely hopeless. But positionally, this is dubious. You're turning into Frank Marshall. I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem necessary to weaken the Black King side. You gotta be a little crazy to do that with your King on G8. Obviously, though, if you're sitting there, you're black, and you're playing King H8, I mean, that's kind of suspicious. That would be suspicious, right? To play King H8. White will have to debate whether your intention is to play G5 or F5, but it's definitely one or the other. That's called telegraphing your moves when you play a move like King H8. It's not subtle. You think it's subtle, but it's not subtle. You're actually like giving away your intention anyway. So he just plays F5. What's the problem? He's like weakening this square forever and ever and ever and ever. There will never be a pawn that can control E5 now. Now check it out. White has a lot of good moves. I mean, Bishop D2. What did I just do? F5. Bishop D2, for example. Maybe knight e5 directly. We're a little bit concerned about f4, f3, but it's still not happening. You know, f4, bishop d2, whatever. You can't play f3 and just give me the pawn. So, I mean, even knight e5 is okay. So he plays f5, dubious, question mark, whatever, bishop d2. Dun dun dun. This was the obvious square for the bishop in the first place. The problem, the only mistake that De La Bourdonnais made in this game was the fact that he played bishop e3 for no reason. It never was even needed. There was nobody attacking d4. Black has what I call the one square position, where he has really, really good control of d5, but like all of his pieces are competing for that square. Why does white need to play bishop e3? He just literally had to get it out of the way so he could try to move his rook. Now he does it. Rook a e1. I like this move. Now, the earlier viewers who were questioning, we could call this the De La Bourdonnais maneuver. The earlier viewers who were questioning his move rook a e8 in the Sicilian, code.exe. This is not an accident. This is a very modern idea. It might be a mistake, but his intentions are aggressive. He expects this rook to play an active role from f1. He's hoping that the rook might play an active role from f1. What do you think the chances are of that? But the problem is your rook is passive on d1 behind this pawn on d4. It's a passive placement. You'd rather have the rook on an open file. He's hoping this f rook. This is a normal move. This is a normal move, I think. Perhaps a waste of time. Rook a e1. Well, he's also contending with this. You know, you gotta imagine, okay, black plays king h8, and then at some point black might exchange on e3. You could take with the f pawn, I guess. But I don't really think that's his main intention here. Rook a e1. g5. Bishop d2. This guy, McDonald, is used to bashing bunnies, I think. Too much bunny bashing. Bishop f6, and now knight e5. Now it's your last chance. Should maybe black consider playing f4 here? It is possible to play f4. I mean, I think it's worthy of consideration. Clearly, one of the biggest drawbacks of f5 is the fact that it blocks the bishop on c8 from active play. Having said A, I would say B. Okay, yeah, well, maybe the white squares are weak. Well, maybe, bishop c2 and queen e4 and all that. Maybe queen h5. Yeah, it looks like black probably shouldn't have played f5 in the first place. It does weaken c2 h7. But what happened now instead isn't really better. He plays queen e8. He's playing the Stonewall Dutch or something. And now f4. And now that's why we put our rook on a e1. Both rooks play, which we later see in the games of modern players like Botvinnik and Reshevsky, for example. He let the rook alignment completely make sense here for white. And then this. I guess this makes sense. You've got pressure on d4, so white can't win the pawn at g4. g4 instead of queen e8. Well, again, it's not a sack, I guess. Although now there are other issues. Take. Beyond this, obviously black's king looks pretty open. There's this move. There are a bunch of different moves here for white. Something along this lines. But nothing like really 100% clear. It does look like g4 was playable. We can look what the Oracle says. The Oracle thinks that black is strategically busted after moving his f and g pawns, and it was a bad idea. hg4, fg4. Wow, just take on d5? Okay. So let's say knight takes. Oh man, look at this. Here. Here. And here. That's what happens when you play f5 and g5 on the black side of the exchange French. Man. So suddenly black just like gets splattered. He would have to play bishop e7. I'm sure that doesn't work either. Oof. Yeah. Yeah, there's no way. He's already screwed his position. So this happened. g4, hg4, fg4. No, sorry. We just already said this. f4. Black played queen e8. White played f4. And then I really like white's game. g4, hg4, fg4, and then f5. I mean, you can see like maybe in the Bourdonnais play here, a prototype of Steinitz, I would say. A little bit of a similarity in some of Steinitz's games. Steinitz could play d4 and e4 later. I would say there's It's obvious that Steinitz studied the games of the Bourdonnais to me, and implemented some of his ideas. What's up, Schieberspieler? It's supposed to be theory. Yeah, no time for theory today. We're just too engrossed in the Bourdonnais games. So g4, f5, queen h5. Trying to hang on to the g4 pawn. And attacking f5. The position is like severed in half. White's control of the e5 square, the e-file coordination. He's like laughing at black here. Now bishop c2. Perfectly coordinated. Queen h4 with a very, very deep idea of g3. Which actually probably doesn't even do anything. No, it does actually. g3 is a threat. Okay. It does. He has the cheapo g3. It almost looks like it was like a king's gambit or something. You almost played yesterday, but you were late by 2 or 3 minutes, so you didn't show up. I was personally not. I'm not in good form, but I don't know if my excuse is that I don't play enough or that I'm burned out. But I need to reset myself one way or the other. I realize it may be kind of like burnout as well as not playing enough. I have to be more really focused and motivated. Sorry you couldn't play. We had a good tournament yesterday. Aldous still won with 6 out of 7. No, white has total control. g3 is a threat. Look at the power of white's centralization. He controls 3 out of 4 central squares. 3 out of 4 kids prefer life cereal. I really wanted the knight on e4. That way we would have like the perfect piece pairs. The problem is g3, right? That's the downside of rook f1 choking in our king. If knight f3, bishop d4 check. This is the one thing that can go wrong in this position. Knight takes d4 and queen h2 mate. Basically the only way that black can win. He gets in this cheapo with g3. So instead white had to play queen e4. Peace friends, the buddy system. King h8, and then eventually he just eats the pawn. Yum yum. No more mates with g3 now. So black has a little bit of counterplay. Knight c4. Everything's under control. Schieberspieler would love this position. Knight takes f6. Bye-bye bishop. We have a passed pawn on f5. Knight takes f6. Queen f6. The king is on a dark square. The queen's on a dark square. If only we could get our bishop to e5. But our bishop is hanging on d2. Now knight takes d5. Yeah, he plays this very simply. I wanted to play this. I don't know. I think if it was my game, it was like blitz game, I would probably play bishop c1. And I don't see a great move for black. Yeah. It doesn't look like black has a really good move here. Instead, he goes into this simplification with knight takes d5, c takes d5, and queen f4. And then it's like a really technical position. But I respect the fact that he wasn't you know, beyond just winning pawn-up games. Knight d2, queen d2, and we're just up a pawn. After all that, we're just up this pawn. All that work for that measly pawn. But it is a good pawn. Okay, we got to win again. Bishop d7, rook e5. That's Morales' favorite square, for good reason. Rook g8. This is poisoned. Rook f e1. Queen h4. Rook e2. Bishop b5. Rook f2. Behind the passed pawn. d4 is solidly protected. g2 solidly guarded. There doesn't seem to be a weak point in white's position, really. And now rook g4. He finds the only counterplay. And there is no way to defend that. That's gone. So f6. Oh. So now it's a contest of whose passed pawn is better. Ours is a little faster. Rook d4. F pawn versus D pawn. All else is equal. There is a slight back rank weakness. It's covered. Queen e3. And now rook g4. Rook e7. I do not like the look of this move. If the white queen gets to e5, it's totally over. Oh my god. That's the Morales square. Man, kind of a problem. Rook g5, f7 check. Oh. You mean it's mate. After rook e5, it's mate. Queen or rook. Actually, let's make it a rook. Make it a rook. 3 rooks. Always mate with the lowest form of life. Rook. Rook mate. So he can't take. He did, though. He really promoted a rook. It's not a joke. That's just mean. Queen g5. This is the final. The finale. That's game. If he played instead queen g5, it doesn't matter, right? Queen e5 is the same, and the only other move is this. White can win with either f8, rook, f8 rook, even rook e8 looks pretty good. I like f8 rook though. So that was crushing. Not good. Alright, so let's look at one more game. I thought like amazing stuff. Let me get the next game. Guys, don't forget, tomorrow night is our subscriber stream. All right. This is game 4. Don't forget, you can check out the replays on my YouTube channel. This will stay up. All the streams stay up on the YouTube channel long term. Sheeber, are you streaming on Friday? I just can't get over how modern he was. I mean, he was actually pre-Morphe, but almost had a more modern style. Morphe was very brutal and sort of less sophisticated in a way, but almost perfect in his own right, but far different stylistically. All right, so e4. We see e4, e5. This is from game 4. All right, Cheaper Spiller, we'll see you for the Friday stream, for your Friday stream after my stream. Rook ae1, but really, you know, if you think about it, when did he play rook ae1? Was that pre f5 or post f5? Post knight fd5. He anticipated, you know what I mean? I think the thing you have to realize, Code XE, is that these guys played this like 80 game match, and that was game 30 something. So if you play one player enough and you play with him, you know his ideas and how he plays. I guess De La Bourdonnais was able to actually anticipate that McDonald liked to play for f5, and he was probably going to do that. He was literally able to anticipate his play. e4, e5. I'm sorry, this is my internet connection on lag. It was after f5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. So now we see like a truly 19th century game. c3, Gioco piano. And now the rarely played and inaccurately considered d6. Morphe said the required move of knight f6 is undoubtedly best. We know that. He says required. The required move. Alekhine would later play queen e7, which is probably the best sideline if you insist on not playing knight f6. Strong pointing e5 would be the intention here. The fact that white's knight can't hop into d5 to some degree justifies this, but it's still, you know, kind of an unprincipled move. So knight f6 is definitely black's best. d6 was played. Yeah, I had this last year against a Hungarian kid, Gombots Ferenc Jr. I don't know why he insists on playing this, but I normally don't play the Italian game, but I was so surprised that he would go into this stuff that I played the Italian game against him to try to get an advantage, and I did. It's actually playable for black. It's Morphe's being too harsh. Probably d6 is not that bad. But I think that white has a slight edge. So d4. And now e takes d4. I mean, you can't play bishop e6, right? de5 and f7. Too many problems. So that's the reason why Alyoshin would play queen e7 to overprotect e5. Black has to give up the center, and white should be better. C takes. If bishop e4 check, you could even play king f1. But that's a little over the top. It looks like knight c3, natural developing move. White is slightly better. Kramnik, Salav. I mean, the question is, can black get enough counterplay hyper-modern style with like bishop g4 or something? I mean, you see there's a couple people here who have played this. Salav, Subramanian, who's a strong woman player in India. It's not completely lost for black. Just not a good variation. This is not a good variation either. Bishop e6. And now white played d5. The thing is, we saw this in Captain Evans' games, right? When we studied some Captain Evans games. The knight doesn't have a good option. b8 is slow. e7 gets in the way. a5. a5 is out the side of the board. Yes, d5 is weird, but it has a precedent. Played very similar positions in this era. It's not the most flexible move. It's probably not bad. White would prefer to keep the tension. Like, if you saw the last game where De La Bourdonnais was playing the exchange French / Queen's Gambit accepted, h3. Pinter Yojef is here, you see. One of the only people who's willing to play this. Actually, Yojef is one of the only players I've ever worked a little bit with, very briefly, here in Hungary. He's a really knowledgeable, very knowledgeable player, especially in classical openings, like e4, e5 with black. He was like coach for the Hungarian team and one of Almasi's primary trainers. Basically, he was Almasi's teacher to some degree. But you would think like the Bourdonnais would play h3, having played h3 in similar structures. I agree. d5 is inflexible. So Morphy says a favorite move of the Bourdonnais at stage is inferior to knight c3. And that's Morphy in 1850s or 60s or whatever. But knight c3 is an ordinary move, you know. Could black possibly play bishop g4? See Gareev. The crazy Timur Gareev actually beat Bosiocic, very strong Croatian grandmaster, with bishop g4. I don't know, but I mean that does seem like logical try for black here. It's almost like sufficient piece pressure on the white center. So I kind of like h3. h3 is not really, you know, Morphy style. We're going beyond Morphy now with h3. Alright, so d5. You know, this has been played. It's horrible for black. So it's a choice between the other squares. Best, according to Morphy, was this. Now h3, it's a little late for that, but I think it's a little late for h3. Honestly. It's a basic, it's a King's Indian-like structure now. Maybe it's not too late. White's still better. Alright. Knight e5. Knight e5. D e5. And now we have the ability to move that pawn forward at some point. And black doesn't have an e5 square for his pieces. Knight c3. This is like a queen pawn game. It looks like black played the Mexican defense. Knight f6. And now bishop g5. I don't know. It's kind of a hollow pin. Not as bad as the McDonald versus the Bourdonnais, though. Not as bad as that awful bishop g5 McDonald played in the first game we looked at in chapter 1. This is at least a real pin. Yeah, it looks like a Mexican defense, except there's a bishop on b6. I don't know. I mean, I suspect the white could play this like a King's Indian. Janza played bishop e5 check. That makes sense. And I guess white has a slight edge. With bishop e5 check, bishop d7, trading the white square bishops favors white. But I guess it just wasn't enough for more than a draw against Yoji. But they're both very strong players. I mean, this is a normal strategic plan for white. He just has like such a small advantage, I guess it wasn't enough to win. Bishop g5, h6 probably should be played. So I assume h6. Is bishop e5 check still a problem? It may be. Black could always play king f8 if he has to. It's probably better than trading the white square bishops at this point. In fact, like king f8, bishop h4, g5. The problem is this pawn. Not that easy to secure that. We need our bishop on d6, like a pawn. Situation is a bit weird, but it's possible that black is okay here. The idea of putting the king on g7. This very well might be alright for black. The engine says only a very slight edge. So I think h6 was clearly best. Instead, what did he do? Castle. That commits our king to that position a little early. Now queen f3. Queen d6. Breaking the pin. Bishop f6. Queen f6. Queen f6. G takes f6. So, honestly, I mean, it seems like you have a very, like, tactical advantage here for white that could easily disappear. This looks like hard work, honestly. I mean, if black gets in f5, your advantage is gone. White could even be worse, facing two bishops. So I don't consider this opening to be a triumph. Equal. Damn. This is the best move. Maintaining equality. You gotta get credit for that move. G4, stopping F5 forever. Black can break with H5 later, so it's still not completely safe. I would think that white's holding the fort. King G7. Obviously you can't take because of Rook G1. So that was astute tactical calculation. There is more weakening of the dark squares as a result of G4. So McDonald actually has a chance here. But you got to give him credit, you know, De La Bourdonnais, for prophylactic play. He's very modern, again. There is no getting those dark squares under control. Maybe H4 later will help a little bit. But he's primarily trying to stop Black's counterplay. I mean, this is really like Karpovian almost. Defensive thinking, like we're preventing what the opponent's trying to do. Almost. Rook H8, well played by Black. Rook G1, preventing. King F8. Rook G2. And now H5 starting to look scary. I guess we can consider pushing the pawn past, but I think we might be worse now. I'm beginning to think that Black might be better here. What do you guys think? Doctor? The doctor is in the house. Oh yeah. My evaluation is good. He should have played H5 right away. Man. Yeah, white slipped here. I mean, if we go back, could we have played H4 ourselves? Dr. Tripchan's suggestion of F3 earlier. There's no way you can play H4. Wow. So white has to be super careful to maintain equality. Super, super careful. Rook D1, Rook D8. Why not H5 type ideas? You know what he could do? He could play bishop back to E2 and just threaten to take here and keep it. Anytime you try to break with H5. I would think this move would be reasonable as well. So this looks like it was misplayed. Knight E2, Rook H8. Very strong play by McDonald in this game. He's clearly more in his element. Rook G1, and Black is better. He misses H5. After Rook G2, plays King E7. Castles queenside. Now H5. And then G5. Black's bishop pair is great. So long as it's not... White doesn't manage to engineer an exchange of white squared bishops. You don't want to end up with dark squared bishop against knight on F5, but Black should be doing well here. Bishop G4. No. He clearly can play Bishop G4. I guess here we have some tactical trick. Takes an F3. I think this is a problem in some variations. So he played instead F5 though. That looks okay. Knight C3, Bishop C5, G6. Something bad happened here. All of a sudden, like, the black king is now not safe. It's ridiculous. After G6. This is really sad. The bishop transferred back to D6 into its shell. And then he opens up the game with f4. And that's where we get the brilliancy. E takes f4. Rook d g1. I really don't understand. How does this work? Guys, I'm gonna have to go soon, but why can't the black king come up to e5? You're gonna get mated, huh? Wow. If you take, okay, we can always just take on e4. What about something like king here? I mean, obviously this is a dangerous situation if you have to go out here. He let that attack get too strong. He let his king get attacked here in this ending. It's unbelievable. It's a disaster. G takes f7, pawn takes f4, rook g1, and now he was just like lost. King f8. Is this position really lost? No. He's fine. Wow, even my move is okay. Oh my god. This is actually okay. That was my first instinct. Not a mistake, Adriana Sor. I would love to get a vaccination. I can't. So I'm gonna have to wait months to get vaccinated. And I can't really say how jealous I am. I'm sure the side effects hurt. But that's worth suffering for. Alright guys, we're going to be leaving in like 5 minutes. This is a defensive possibility. Black just played too passively. Apparently even f3 would have saved the game. So not a perfect game by Bourdonnais, but creative. Here, now rook f6, rook g6 rather, f3, e takes f5, bishop e5, and then d6, threatening rook g8 mate. And he's suddenly winning. The magician. Alright guys, it's time for my alarm, so we've got to go. We'll show you the end of the game. d6, cd6, rook g8, rook g8, rook g8, king e7, knight d5. This is funny though, he blundered mate in 1. You can play king f7 when you lose a rook to knight b6 check. But instead McDonald blundered bishop e5 mate. Everyone saw it except for you. Sometimes you just have to get lucky. Thank you everybody for tuning in. It was a fun stream. I enjoyed these games. You can always check out the study. I'll put the link in there for everyone. I will see everybody tomorrow night for our subscriber stream. Thursday, game analysis with subscribers. Thanks everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night at 6:30. Thanks Astrobate. Thanks everyone for supporting the stream. However you can, I appreciate it. We'll see everyone tomorrow night. Bye-bye.